Zimbabwe's unity government is a little more than a year old, but the unity that analysts had hoped for seems barely apparent, with stalemates over cabinet appointments, disputes over policy, and continuing human rights abuses. Viewers Rebecca Wood reports.
Constantine Mukinya says he experienced firsthand what critics of Zimbabwe's government have long alleged, rule by intimidation and fear.
You know, somebody put a pistol in my mouth and basically said, how can you help a white man? And they said, during the Liberation War, we used to bury people like you alive. You know, and I tried to explain to him that, look, I don't look at anybody's color. These are problems. I've defended ZANU-PF people. I don't care about the politics. That's probably made it worse.
Mukinya says he was a successful attorney who had represented several white farmers when the government confiscated their land. He had also been tapped as a high court judge. But on the day of his appointment, the Secretary of Justice told him what was expected of his role.
And he said there's been a trend for people that have been appointed by the president to pass judgments that embarrass the president. We don't want you to do that kind of thing. And then they were going to give me a list of names. They called them consultants. Said whenever you deal with a case that involves government interest, you call these people, they will give you an indication of what government interests are, and then you will make a judgment with that in your mind.
Mukinya says he rejected the position and then had to go into hiding before finally coming to the United States. Although President Mugabe's ZANU-PF party now shares power with the Movement for Democratic Change, the MDC, the president is still very much in charge in Zimbabwe. Scott Taylor, who has lived in Harare, is director of the African Studies program at Georgetown University.
ZANU-PF continues to monopolize the power within this arrangement. Morgan Tsvangirai is looking increasingly discredited for having agreed to it and being part of it, and then echoing internationally the idea about sanctions on ZANU-PF being removed and so on. So what we have is a very fractious environment, but there's a degree of stability in it. It's sort of a paradox. I would suspect that would continue for the next few years, as we had the jockeying for power behind the scenes in terms of who gets to succeed Mugabe, the age-old question that has been asked for at least 10 years.
The unity government was formed a little more than a year ago after hotly contested elections led to a spate of political violence. In what analyst Richard Downey calls an imperfect agreement, Mugabe remained president and Tsvangirai became prime minister.
They've brought these people together and they all sit around a table in the cabinet, but as you say, there's very little interaction with them or crossover between ministries. The parties have their individual departments which they control, and there's very little overlap and really active cooperation between them.
Zimbabwe's unity government has come under scrutiny because of that lack of cooperation. But Downey says on the positive side, the MDC-controlled finance ministry has brought down Zimbabwe's inflation.
They've kind of managed to drive down the rampant hyperinflation they've ditched the Zimbabwean currency and tagged the currency to the dollar. That's had a good impact in bringing hyperinflation down. So I think, you know, the MDC members of the cabinet have done some decent work. The problem is the security-related ministries are all in hands of the ZANU-PF party, and therefore you've seen very little progress on sort of restoring an independent judiciary and having rule of law, effective police that doesn't abuse the population. You still have arbitrary arrests going on as well.
Downey says human rights and electoral commissions have recently been set up in what he calls small steps in the right direction. He says a new constitution would also help promote democratic reforms. Scott Taylor says restoring the economy is what's needed in Zimbabwe, and not necessarily the removal of President Mugabe.
I don't think that the magic fix is the removal or retirement or death of Robert Mugabe. This situation it's really a tinderbox now, and the struggle for power, I hope and pray it's not violent, but it certainly will be very, very intense.
Both Taylor and Downey believe it may be years before Zimbabwe has real political stability. In the meantime, Constantine Wakinya, who came to the United States 7 years ago with just $19, says he's moving on with his new life in the United States.
I'm like another 2 years from citizenship, but I'm a lot better off now with a whole lot of opportunities coming up.
Wakinya says he plans to take the law exam to practice in the U.S. and may even go into politics. Rebecca Ward, VOA News, Washington.